This podcast is intended for mature audiences and contains adult language and subject matter. Listeners, please be advised.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another stunning edition of Drinking with Your Ex. I am Blake Thompson.
And I'm Bonnie Neal, and this is the podcast that Blake and I are doing called Drinking with Your Ex and Other Bad Ideas.
Lots of bad ideas.
This is a podcast that is brought to you by Blake and I, our exes. We dated back in the day, and we wound up as friends, and now we find ourselves both single and over 40 with super strong opinions about
Painfully single.
I mean, I'm not here to kink shame. I don't find it painful, but I guess you do. Anyway, with strong opinions about why we're both single. And so Blake is also a licensed therapist. Happened well after we dated and broke up. And so he has some weird expert opinions on dating, and I just have my own opinions, and thus we share it with you. You're welcome. Before we get into our fabulousness of this particular episode, I did want to let people know. So, Drinking with Your Ex podcast is a sponsor for an event that will be happening this year at the South by Southwest Music Festival 2023. We are the co-sponsors of the Mixed Tape Party, which is presented by the Cosmic Clash and the Loyalty Firm. This event will take place on March 16th, 2023 at BLK Vinyl from 11:30 to 4 p.m. We've got a hell of a lineup: DZ Brown, Chiquita B, Porcelain, My Education. Drinking with Your S podcast is a co-sponsor with Independence Brewing and Weird Water. This event is free, but all proceeds from any sales at the vinyl record store or any of the third-party vendors, all proceeds will go to Sims Foundation, which we've mentioned a few times, but this is the go-to charity for Drinking with Your Ex. Sims Foundation is?
The Sims Foundation provides mental health and substance use treatment for the musicians and the musician community at large in the Austin area. It's a great way for individuals to get destigmatized mental health and substance use recovery services.
In Austin with the music community. And, as you know, Drinking with Your Ex, we are all about therapy. Yay! And we are all about mental health care. So please, if you want to see Blake and Bonnie, you want to come out and meet us, we're going to be live and in person. Once again, March 16th, 2023 at BLK Vinyl, which is located at 2505 East 6th Street, Austin, Texas, 78702. March 16th, 11:30 to 4. Home seals, guys.
It's going to be exciting.
I know. We're coming out. We're allowed to let people see us. We're not just faces made for radio. We're gonna do it, people. It's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be fun. We're gonna have some swag. We're gonna be talking with people. And again, as Bonnie put it, all proceeds go to Sims, and we'll be auctioning off.
I don't think it's being an auction. I think it's gonna be a raffle. I'm gonna try to do a raffle. We have a very fancy bottle of booze that we will be raffling off to everybody who comes to the event, the party. And yeah, it's a fancy bottle of booze. You got to show up to know which one it is. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, and we also want to keep you in suspense, so show up.
Exactly. Again, event brought to you by Cosmic Clash, also a friend of the podcast, which is one of the most amazing music blogs and websites out there. If you need to know anything about Austin music or frankly, the music scene writ large, cosmicclash.com is where you need to go. Look at us. We've got friends.
We got friends and we're sponsoring and we're doing all kinds of stuff.
I know we're going to be in public. I'm just so proud of us.
I mean, yeah, for season 2, this is amazing.
I know, right? Speaking of season 2, if you're just tuning in, so this podcast, again, I told you, Blake and I are exes. We talk about dating as well as other sort of emotional topics. This podcast has 3 rules.
Yes. Rule number 1, each episode is inspired by a booze, cocktail, or alcohol-related incident of your choice.
Exactly. Rule number 2 is both Blake and I get to introduce the other one, thus engaging in the timeless edge play of having your ex introduce you to the world.
I need help.
You do. You do. I've got a good one. And then rule number 3 is that we both get to ask each other an uncomfortable question about the week's topics.
Yes. And for our listeners out there that have told us, this is my favorite part of the episode, listening to you emotionally eviscerate each other.
Yeah, I mean, like, we love you. You're our audience. But no, we get it. Like, the whole sort of emotional bleeding part, half the fun. Yay. But no, an uncomfortable question gets asked by each one, and you must answer. There's no backseas.
Yeah.
There's no tapping out. And we sometimes get deep into it.
And that leads us to tonight's topic. So we are going to be talking about how to identify a narcissist and what to look out for.
Right. I feel like based on our, some of our topics that we've gone through, this is a question that's come up a lot. Please, guys, actually, I want to put that out there. This is all about plugging. We do love your questions. We do read your answers. We do respond to them. Please, if you have any questions, any concerns, any topic ideas, anything you just want to get off your chest about something we say, the way to contact us is info@drinkingwithyourx.com. It is spelled exactly the way you think. Correctly. Yeah. drinkingwithyourx.com. Send these topics in, and this is one of the topics that came up.
Also, we are on Facebook at Drinking With Your Ex.
That's correct. And we are also on Twitter at DrinkingX, which is the best Twitter handle ever. And so, yes, any way you can reach out, we have a website, drinkingwithyourx.com. You can also send an email there. Please reach out, let us know, talk to us. This is awesome. You guys are the best part of it, frankly.
I know, right? And on that note, tonight's inspiration for this topic is bottle service.
That's true. That, like, our rule number one. Tonight's topic on narcissism. Are you one? Are you dating one? We decided that the drink...
Or can you spot one?
We decided that the drink most, accurate for narcissist is bottle service. If you are willing to pay $1,500 for that bottle of Crown Royal to impress your date, you might be a narcissist. I'm just saying... Yes, this may be more prevalent in certain parts of the country, but...
And also, depending on the club, this is how you get hepatitis.
Well, when you were talking about, like, ordering, bottle service at CBGB's, I was like, so you can get hepatitis with that bottle of Dom Perignon? I mean, like, most ridiculous thing, yeah. But, paying $1,200 for a, $40 bottle of scotch, you might be a narcissist. Just
maybe
saying.
Smidge of a bit.
Anyway.
And if you are, just to let you know, you can donate that money to the Sims Foundation.
Exactly. You know what? If we just called you out and you're feeling exposed, you can feel better about yourself by donating that money to the Sims Foundation at simsfoundation.org. Just letting you know. All right. So second rule, introductions.
I'm going to allow Bonnie to go first since she told me she had a really good one.
I do have a really good one. If you've been listening to any of this season thus far, you understand that I do read your comments and I do respond to the feedback I get from our listeners. And I might be slightly defensive around some of that feedback and comments about our listeners, in which they tell me that I'm the mean one and Blake is the nice one, and that I'm way too mean to Blake. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce my ex-boyfriend, Blake Matthew Thompson.
Oh, full names. Look at you.
To whom I had a listener tell me, Bonnie, I don't know why they call you the mean one. You just have to listen to Blake and you can hear the seething rage in his voice. And I was like, thank you. Thank you for noticing. So there you go, Blake Matthew Thompson with mass seething rage in his voice. You're welcome.
Wow. So, on that note, let me introduce my ex of 25 years.
Damn, you're old. I mean,
Bonnie Neal, who is looking forward to introducing me every week now since she's been told she's the mean one.
Really? That's all you got?
That's all I got.
I'm winning. Hashtag winning. Oh my God, so winning. Totally. Talk about winning. Winning. It's not a competition.
I don't have a good one tonight. I'm sorry.
I don't never have a good one, so I'm just excited that I had one. As you can tell, rule number 2, contentious. I think I won. Hashtag winning. Yay. All right, let's just move into this conversation. So, narcissism. So this was Blake's idea.
As Bonnie just provided a prime example of what it could be.
Oh, fuck you, counselor. Yeah. So
I'm sorry. Were you not waiting for the backhand?
Well, I'm glad that, your true colors coming out. This is another one of Blake's topics that he chose because this is, so something comes up that people want to ask, like, how do you know if you're dating a narcissist? And my question is, how do you know you're not one? And narcissists tends to be kind of a trending topic amongst dating, where people tend to do some Google diagnoses on whether or not their ex, their ghoster, their whatever is a narcissist.
Yes, there's a ton of tests out there. As soon as you Google, how do I know if I'm dating a narcissist? There's all these little tests you can take to answer yes or no. Are you dating a narcissist?
The Myers-Briggs of narcissism identification.
Yes. And also, You might identify some narcissistic tendencies you might have yourself.
So that is where I come from with it. Like Blake has some very specific detailing about what is a, kind of therapeutic diagnosis of a narcissist and different kinds. I personally think there are very few pure narcissists. What tends to happen is that most human beings, especially Americans, are prone to having a lot of very specific narcissistic tendencies.
And it gets thrown around because it's a buzzword.
It is a buzzword, like manic depressive, right? Like isn't exactly a
Manic
diagnosis.
depressive, bipolar, what have you.
Yeah.
It's like they're the buzzword diagnoses that we like to talk about. And as we know, is narcissism falls under the Narcissistic Personality Disorder aspect.
So it's a personality disorder, which is a clinical diagnosis. And that means that there is a clinician who is like in your presence who basically makes the diagnosis
exactly
based on a variety of symptoms.
Based off of a variety of symptoms, which they look like a pattern of self-centered arrogance, thinking and behavior, lack of empathy.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, if you can.
Like an overt emotional need to be the center of attention.
So there was a specific definition that you gave me. Do you have it handy? Because I thought that was a real blanket term that we could get into kind of the more details of.
Yes. I mean, so it involves a pattern of self-centered arrogant thinking and behavior, a lack of empathy and consideration for other people, and an excessive need for admiration.
So I feel like, okay, wait, one more time. What was the first one? A lack of what?
A lack of empathy. A lack of empathy, but also involves a self-centered arrogant thinking.
Self-centered arrogant thinking, a lack of empathy, and kind of a pathological need to be the center of attention.
Yes.
Right. So
almost, excessive need.
Excessive needs. So I feel like these three traits pretty much is what somebody would say about their ex under any circumstances, right? But
yeah. And also grandiosity is also the defining trait of narcissism.
So grandiosity is defining trait of narcissism. But there's also other kinds. You kind of like broke down the narcissistic breakdown. So there's what did you say? Overt and covert narcissists.
Yeah. There's overt and covert. There's, malignant.
In communal. All right. So we're gonna stick with those four.
Yeah, we'll stick with those four, but let's go back and let's talk about each symptom.
Okay.
So there's the grandiose sense of self-importance.
Okay.
Where you have an individual that feels they need and deserve to be the center of attention.
Okay.
And that's when they come into a room, you can identify those individuals by ones that are a lot of I statements, talking about themselves, not valuing other people's opinions when they're speaking.
Well, I mean, thank you for mentioning your current cancer diagnosis. That reminds me of something that happened to me. I woke up this morning and stubbed my toe, and that was really traumatic. I don't know if I need to go see the doctor. I mean, I called the doctor and the doctor didn't have much. Wait, that guy, right?
It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a bad day? Well, let me tell you about mine.
So yeah, grandiose personality changes the conversation always to them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And there's always a way for it to come back on them.
It always relates back to them.
Yes. Somehow, some way. It's a circular thinking.
Got it. Okay. So that's a fairly reasonably identifiable behavior.
Mm-hmm.
It's also not remarkably different from somebody who's just regularly an extrovert.
Well, there's also the need for endless praise and admiration.
Okay, which usually comes from those conversations about themselves. They usually we were talking about this, like narcissists tend to have very rehearsed and curated stories about how the world done them wrong, right? So that it's told to elicit that, oh God, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that happened. That's horrible. You're so strong to be here. You're so strong to go through that,
And that's the type of attention they're looking for.
Right. They interrupt the person to discuss their chemo treatment for breast cancer. And they're like, yeah, let's go back to my toe,
My cat pissed on my rug this morning. I was just so upset. Can you imagine just what I had to go through this morning just before I went to work?
Or they get pain competitive. I've seen that with some narcissists where you're like, there's a person there who's talking about like her chemo and breast cancer, and they kind of interrupt to be like, oh no, that's true. I mean, I went through breast cancer with my mother and, had to like nurse her. She died in my arms,
yes.
And it was 20 hours before the hospice came in. And so I was holding her while she started to smell. And you're like,
yes.
Wow. Okay.
The pain dick waving contest. Congratulations. You have the trophy. You win.
Right.
Your life sucks worse than mine.
Yeah. They're kind of constant gold medalists in the pain Olympics. And every story, like I told a friend of mine, I was like, the only difference between a narcissist and kind of, just somebody who's just a dick is that, narcissists are always upping the stakes or upping the ante, it's.
And also so to the point to where some of it is not real, where they're
lying.
They're flat out lying.
Yes.
There's the delusions of grandeur and the sense of grandiosity that they need to keep going to where they need to one up it.
Right. And they need to win, right? There's a competitive sense to it, right?
Yes.
Yes.
It's like, I am the most important thing in the room. You need to learn your place.
You need to respond with the praise and the care and
Yes.
oh God, you're so strong. Why are you so strong?
Well, there, kitten. I see how you're doing. And
yeah. Okay. So, all right. So that's the grandiose, that's the kind of self-centered arrogance also that you're talking about.
And also the sense of entitlement.
Entitlement. So that's big word that's kind of thrown around the same way like privileges, right?
Well, like privileges and entitlement, we're talking in this case, it's a similar wavelength.
Yes. So entitlement, and in what context are you using it now?
Because they feel they deserve everything they're getting.
So they're entitled to the entire room's attention. They're entitled to the entire dinner party's attention. They're entitled to you feeling that you need to walk on eggshells around them because they're very delicate. They're very, they're like, how dare you trigger them, right? They're entitled to your excessive care.
Exactly.
And concern. Got it.
And they want you to constantly feed into that. And they'll find ways to manipulate a situation or conversation to where they're putting you in a place to where you have to give that behavior, especially in a public place.
Can you give me a for instance?
For instance, well, like we were saying, you're at a dinner party and you hear someone talking about themselves, and you just want to go, oh my God, what a self-centered asshole you are. But you can't, because you have to worry about what your social setting looks like and what your social standing looks like while you're in that group of people.
So one would say you want to call out the loudmouth for being a self-centered asshole, but honestly, frankly, in that statement, you become the self-centered asshole.
Exactly. All of a sudden, it's like you prove their point.
Right. I do think that's actually, I do think that the way to identify a narcissist is actually sometimes the way you feel around them, right? Because sometimes it's a little hard to spot the behavior in the wild, so to speak. But if you feel like you can't criticize them, if you feel like you can't respond authentically, if you feel like you're constantly kind of trying to address or mitigate your own behavior based on them being upset, right? You don't want to upset them. Walk away. That's usually a sign that you're kind of maybe being controlled slightly by a narcissist. Okay, but I want to push back on the idea, like and I want you to give me your therapeutic opinion, and then I want you to give me your Blake seething rage opinion that are both wildly different things. Back to my original statement in that I think true, pure narcissists who fit into the DSM definition, I think they're rarer than you think. I think they're kind of as rare as like psychopaths or sociopaths. Like there's not like 1 in 10.
And again, like a true narcissist is an individual with incredibly low self-esteem that is doing everything they can to cover that up.
So, but it's a personality disorder. That's a difference from narcissistic tendencies.
Right. Because again, a personality disorder, unfortunately, even with a DSM, it's very subjective. Because when you're talking to somebody with a personality disorder, they're going to argue with you, no, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me.
Right.
And when you're presenting evidence to them, they're going to find a way to deflect or manipulate that verbiage to where, no, that's not about me. That's more about you.
Right.
Which comes into narcissist gaslighting, which is always a good time.
I mean, fair. I mean, my idea is that most people don't get diagnosed. Most true narcissists rarely get diagnosed with it because they rarely seek help, right? They're rarely like asking a therapist, what's wrong with me? Because I think nothing's wrong with them, right?
Oh, no, they feel they're absolutely fine.
I don't know if this is true or not. My perception of narcissists is they also tend to fall into deep bouts of depression.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like deep, dark bouts of depression.
And also, most narcissists will have a comorbid issue of another mental health disorder, either major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, possibility of bipolar disorder. There's just many different.
So comorbidity means that
you have more than one issue.
Right. So you have
more than one diagnosis.
More than one diagnosis. So you have multiple personality disorders.
No, that's a completely different thing.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. You have multiple, as in more than one.
Yeah.
Diagnosable personality disorders, like antisocial personality disorder is one of them, right? And things like that. Okay, but it's probably not a reasonably common diagnosis because most don't seek out.
Most people don't seek it out.
Even in the depths of their depression, right? Or they do, and then when presented with evidence that maybe they're slightly narcissistic, I assume it's not presented with, oh my God, you're a fucking narcissist, get the fuck out of my face.
Yeah.
You're like, well, maybe, the therapist does like a Blake thing, like, well, maybe.
Well, maybe let's talk about some of your behaviors and like some of your interactions with other people, where it's like we're taking the emphasis off the diagnoses.
It's non-accusatory, but
It's not accusatory because like all my clients I work with, I take emphasis off. I put it towards the treatment and their behaviors themselves versus the actual, this is your diagnosis.
Because diagnoses tend to feel accusatory, right? They're stigmatizing.
Accusatory and they're stigmatizing.
And they're kind of sometimes like corrosive to a sense of self, and I would say like, most narcissists suffer from a distorted sense of self.
Exactly.
Right? The narcissistic behavior is there to kind of build up a distorted sense of low self-esteem, right? Okay. Anyway, wow. Okay, so that's the total like therapeutic thing. Let's maybe get into how do you know if you're dating a narcissist? What would you say?
How do you know if you're dating a narcissist? One, if the emphasis on any interaction together is about them, somehow about them. Like we talked previously about love bombing.
Right.
Where love bombing is not really about you, but it's about the action that this individual just perpetuated. And then now all of a sudden it's like, boom, it's about me. Look at me. Look how great I am. I did this for you. I love you.
Look at how great I am doing this thing for you.
Yes.
Right? That's what kind of love bombing is like.
Yes.
How amazing am I because I did this thing for you?
Yes. And it's...
How grateful are you because I did this thing for you?
Yes. How grateful are you that...
For me.
Yes. Oh, but you're so grateful that I'm here. Your life is so much better now that we're together.
Right. God, you're welcome. I mean, I'm so fabulous. You're welcome. Okay. Yeah. Well, and yes, like...
There's a lot of emotional manipulation that comes from a narcissist, where there's a lot of gaslighting involved, where it's, if you're having an argument, you can sit there and spot. It's like, oh, I'm sorry I made you feel that way.
I feel like it's more like, I'm sorry you feel that way. I did nothing.
Yes.
I did nothing like you're saying I did, right? That, the way you feel is not my responsibility. I feel like that's also kind of a go-to one, which is an accurate statement, but also a manipulative statement. With narcissists.
Absolutely.
I mean, is it possible for all right, so here we go into like genuine narcissists as opposed to narcissistic tendencies. And I feel like I need to kind of break down why I think that is. Mainly because I think genuine narcissists who are just sort of full-blown into the full-on clinical diagnosis of a personality disorder, I don't think there's a lot to be gained from continuing to engage in a relationship with them.
There's not.
All right, so there is something to be said for being able to identify somebody who is treatment resistant or beyond treatment, right? And so genuine narcissists. But I do think like some of the case studies I've had, some of my friends who listen to the podcast who've been telling me their stories about some of their exes, I don't know if some of their exes are genuine narcissists so much as though their exes display a lot of narcissistic tendencies, right? There's a lot of narcissistic tendencies around their behavior, especially around their behavior when confronted with negative emotions from their partner, when confronted with conflict. I would say like narcissistic behavior comes out in those moments when somebody is, because it's a defense mechanism, right? It arose out of a sense of low self-esteem, and it's a defense mechanism against feeling bad. It's a defense mechanism against feeling inferior, feeling in trouble, right? Feeling negative emotions, feeling shame, feeling anger, feeling fear, right?
But also on the flip side of that, someone with narcissistic tendencies or someone that could possibly have the diagnosis, there's also a level of belittling. There's also a level of bullying. There's also a level of intimidation.
Yes. I mean, yes, narcissistic tendencies do all of those things, right?
Yeah.
They bully, they belittle, they intimidate as a way to get past feeling negative emotions and also fielding negative emotions from a partner.
Yeah. And there's a lot of deflection involved in that, as we were saying.
Deflection, gaslighting, right? Kind of similar to the same things, right? I don't have a problem. You have a problem, kind of that deflecting back.
I'm sorry, this isn't about me. This is more about
you. Right. Yes. And, I think it's not uncommon to see that behavior with somebody when presented with conflict, right? I think in general, human beings, Americans in general, are not really taught how to deal with conflict directly or well, and
also we're also taught to be exceptional.
hold that for a moment, because I do that was my idea, man. I got a thing to say about that. That narcissistic tendencies, especially a lot of these deflective behaviors, especially like, it's not you, it's me, I'm sorry, it's not me, it's you. They come out of a feeling cornered, feeling on the spot, not being able to handle negative emotions. Keep in mind that these tendencies arose, or honestly, the personality arose as a way to protect somebody from how shitty they feel about themselves, right?
Or how they were taught when they were younger.
Right, which is usually how they were taught that they were shitty human beings, right? And so it's piled on. I mean, narcissists are not born, they're made.
They're created.
They're created. It is much like antisocial, it is a learned disorder as opposed to a, organic genetic one. Okay, so wait a minute, I'm not quite sure where we were going with this. But the tendencies versus the diagnosis. I think modern dating is about trying to deal with and wade through narcissistic tendencies, narcissistic behavior, I think is a better way of thinking about.
Right.
How to engage with narcissistic behavior or not, versus how to diagnose your ex as a narcissist. I feel like, I don't know if diagnosing your ex as a narcissist, I'm not quite sure what the upside there is that maybe to help with the pain of separation. Yeah. But diagnosing them with narcissistic behavior.
If you see your ex with any of the behaviors we've already discussed, more than likely they have narcissistic tendencies that have developed over time through other relationships. Like, our goal right now is to help you see the red flags and what you could be walking into a potential relationship.
So is there any way in which I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say here. Is there any way in which to cut that defensive mechanism kind of at the knees and get that person to engage with you, to talk with you, to connect with you? Is there any way in which, like, when you say you're, in a relationship and this person has fucked up, right? Mm-hmm. And you're kind of being like, coming with them, being like, you hurt my feelings. We need to talk about this. This is something like going back on our previous conversation about fighting fair. Like,
right.
You come to them very directly, which can feel very threatening, but you're coming at them very directly saying like, hey, we need to talk about this incident that happened. I'm very upset about it. It hurt my feelings. I'm very angry at you. And then they start kind of going into, something to pay attention to. Like, when they feel threatened, when they feel like they're in a situation they don't know anything about, they tend to have narcissistic tendencies tend to come out. It's a defense mechanism, right?
Yes, it's absolutely a defense mechanism. But also, as you're saying, in the fighting fair aspect of it, communicating directly to where you're not giving them an out.
Yes, because in this moment,
you're constructively coming to them with your feelings, with their actions, and what's being created from those two things.
So is there any way in which to, I don't know what the right word is like disable the narcissistic behavior to get them to stay here with you and like be here in this like moment of uncomfortableness and deal with this conflict, right? Is there any like?
You could also just exactly what you said, like say, yeah, I know this is an uncomfortable conversation, but it's something that has to be had.
Right. I need you to stay here.
Yeah.
And maybe using some of the things we talked about with fighting fair, which is like, we're not going to talk about whether what you did was right or wrong, right? We're going to take away the jury and the argument about right or wrongness. What I need you to deal with right now is my feelings are hurt. I am hurt. Something that happened that you did has hurt my feelings. Please deal with me there, right? Can I need you to stay there? Can I need you to say, like, what would you say if I say that something you did has hurt my feelings? What is the first thing you would say? You would say,
I'm sorry.
Right. And then there we go. Can narcissists do that? I feel like narcissists cannot do that. I feel like people with narcissistic tendencies as defense mechanisms can.
A narcissist won't apologize.
Right, because they've never done anything wrong.
Yeah.
Or to do something wrong, to admit to wrongness is like...
In their mind, no, I did nothing wrong. Apologize for what?
Or you want me to lie and say, well, I did something wrong to make you feel better, right?
Oh, it's like, I'm sorry you feel this way, but... How many times have we heard that conversation?
But it's not my fault. It's not my problem, not my deal, right?
Yeah. It's like, okay, you're feeling this way. Those are your feelings. It has nothing to do with me.
Right. And it's not fair that you're punishing me for your feelings.
If someone avoids absolutely saying the words, you know what I did was messed up. I am sorry I hurt your feelings with my behavior. If they're saying that, yes, you have a redeemable human being in front of you.
Or to kind of talk about myself, I was raised by a narcissist, so I know without a doubt I have narcissistic tendencies. So I'm just like, how to have that fight, being like, I'm sorry that what I did hurt you. And that was not my intention. I did not intend to hurt you. The reasons in which I did the thing were actually not about you. And I'm actually even sorry about that. I'm just sorry that this affected you. That was not my intention. I'm sorry. That also seems like a weirdly defensive, narcissistic tendency to defense it is, isn't it?
A
Right?
little bit.
Because,
But again,
I mean, honestly, it's basically like, I want to say, like, I'm sorry you were, innocent bystander. I'm sorry you were casualties, like innocent casualties in some of the things that I've done in my life. I wish in some ways I hadn't done those things in my life. I'm also real sorry that they've hurt the people in my life. But that also, oh God, yeah, never mind. Narcissistic tendencies.
Yeah, there's tendencies out there. And also when you're calling it out, letting them know, it's like, okay, you have needs that obviously I can't meet.
You say that to a narcissist, or a narcissist says that?
You're saying that to a narcissist.
Okay.
Where when it comes to what we're saying, where someone is apologizing to you
Okay.
and they're avoiding the apology.
Yes.
They're sitting there skirting around those 2-3 words.
Yes.
And they're telling you, these are my needs in this situation, where obviously it's a manipulation, a little bit of gaslighting, because they're saying, no, this isn't my fault.
Yes.
And
I didn't do anything wrong. I'm
Right.
sorry that you're upset about it, but I didn't do anything wrong.
obviously you have some type of need to avoid this topic,
Yes.
and that I can't help you with. And our relationship can't move forward until we have a really distinct discussion on what this behavior looks like.
Yes. I speaking as somebody with narcissistic tendencies who just sort of over-explained themselves and just wanted to I have a lot of like lawyer, like, but you weren't my intended target and I'm real sorry it hurt you, is kind of what I just said. Yes, because we have a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours. Don't worry, he doesn't listen to this podcast. We can say what the fuck we want. I mean, he lies to us every time and says, no, I totally listen. Doesn't listen to it because he'd be a lot madder if he would. But we have who I think is kind of stuck in the throes of like defensive narcissistic tendencies, right? Because he feels kind of cornered and
Not heard.
not heard. I mean, I think he's in a constant state of defensiveness, not unrelated to over drinking. But one of the things he did in one of our big blowouts is he just kept saying that I didn't do anything wrong. I get that you're upset, but I didn't do anything wrong. And I think it's kind of wrong that you're mad at me. But that was his ultimate takeaway, is that I didn't do anything wrong. You're upset about it. And I wish you weren't upset about it because it's making me feel bad. I'm like, okay. So my main takeaway from this conversation is you don't think you did anything wrong. Cool. I'm leaving. Cool. And defensive moments like that, because about, fighting fair is sometimes not about admitting whether what actually happened was right or wrong. It's admitting that how the other person is feeling is something you didn't want, and apologizing for that, But there are some things where I kind of need some admission of guilt. I need to actually understand why I'm angry.
But again, what you're talking about is setting a boundary.
Right.
You're setting a healthy boundary with that individual, and doing that either gently or harsh is letting them know you crossed a line.
Yes.
And you need to recognize you crossed a line.
Do you remember what we were talking about previously before I mentioned the friend? About fighting, right?
Yeah.
But
About fighting fair.
And how to get somebody out of a narcissistic behavior to engage in real intimacy. And here we go. This is my problem with narcissists. And this is how you know whether you're dealing with a narcissist, and tell me whether I'm right or wrong.
Right on.
All right. So how you know you're dealing with a narcissist is it actually comes down to disclosure, and it comes down to stories.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways I feel that human beings engage in intimacy is we kind of share stories and do some relating. I know that sometimes this can be a maladaptive coping mechanism where it can turn into a pain game. Well, I had a stubbed toe. Well, I got a broken arm, right? That it can turn into that sense of competitiveness. But I also think that, where you can say like, or somebody's sharing a story of, I never knew my father. He kind of skipped out on my mom when I was a kid. And, it was only just me and my mom. This was, so we always kind of like formed that way, that kind of story. And you share, okay, my parents didn't, but they, also was a really unhappy marriage, and that has its own downside, right? The bonding of intimacy is sometimes sharing experiences and holding those intimate stories with each other. What happens with a narcissist is there's not that exchange of equal intimacy or equal vulnerability.
There's not, because one, the narcissist is going to see that as not a vulnerability or an intimate part. That's something they don't want to admit to.
Right. So the story they give you is usually something competitive, something higher drama or something like that, right? your father walked, you never knew your father walked out on you. Yeah, well, my father raped all of his children, including me. You're like, whoa, okay, right? It's an escalation of story and intimacy of story, and that it seems rehearsed, right? There's a rehearsed, kind of curated experience to it, and that they don't ever take a moment to sit and acknowledge your story, right? They don't say, oh God, I'm sorry. Like, what is it meant to sort of just be you and your mom? Was that good enough or was that hard? That they don't take a moment to engage and empathize with what your experience was.
And it's usually when that occurs, like the rebuttal from the narcissist is a direct ignoring act where you have them go, oh, so, and I immediately one up.
Yes.
It's not even considered.
Not even a moment, right? Yeah. It's just within that moment, I feel like narcissists, how you're with a narcissist, if you ever have that moment where you're talking with somebody and you realize that you don't think they're actually listening to you, you think they're just waiting for their turn to talk.
That's a really great comment.
That's how you're kind of talking with somebody who either is a narcissist or is in the throes of like automatic narcissistic behavior, is you don't think they're listening to you. They're just waiting for their moment to talk.
Yeah. And at that time, they're not hearing you either.
No, because they're actually rehearsing the cool thing they're about to say in their head.
Exactly.
Yes. There you go. How to spot you're with a narcissist is if you ever had that fucking moment with them.
Absolutely. I can't agree more.
That's a good litmus test.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, going on to this way in which I'm kind of excusing some of my own narcissistic behavior is something Blake and I got into talking about this subject, and I do want to kind of bring up. In that narcissistic behavior can be cultural in its nature.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that Americans in general display a lot of narcissistic behaviors just based on being fucking Americans, right? I also ventured the idea that seeking therapy is a narcissistic behavior exercise.
That's a fine line that you're dancing on.
Yes, but follow me on it.
Absolutely.
Right? Think about what therapy is, right? Therapy is you, the sense of I, seeking out to purchase another human being's time and attention to talk about your own thoughts and feelings and experiences with the goal of optimizing your life experience, right? So there is a whole me moment built into that, right? There is it seems like a narcissistic exercise at its core. It also seems like a capitalist exercise at its core. And I don't think those are not related to each other. I do think part of the reason I do think most Americans have some narcissistic tendencies is I think like American capitalism is narcissistic at its core in that it does encourage an emphasis on the individual, an emphasis on the individual experience, the emphasis on the individual consumer experience, right? Like your identity as a consumer is in and of itself valuable, or else we wouldn't have Karens in the world, right? That, a Karen is somebody who is basically defending their own narcissistic experience.
Can I speak to your manager?
Right. Just like like Americans are quite narcissistic in our consumptive manners.
And also, Bonnie brought up the best example ever of this. If you've ever been in a Starbucks at 7:00 in the morning listening to someone order their very specific, over-specialized coffee drink.
Thank you. Right. I mean, like, yes. If you ever want to know what fucking narcissistic behavior is, go to fucking Starbucks in the morning and listen to people order coffee. The fact that you can
God forbid if it gets fucked up.
Yes. The fact that you can order, 2.5 Splenda half calf espresso, oat milk, no fat, sugar-free, blah, blah, blah. The fact that you can fucking order that and that's a sense of thing, right? Like you can define yourself by your very complicated Starbucks order. There's narcissism in how individual capitalism and the capitalist consumer is promoted in this fucking country.
Exactly.
And recognizing that's the question I have when people are like, oh, I'm dating a narcissist. And I was like, yes, but is that narcissist you? Right? Because it takes one to know one, bitches. I'm just saying, that this is a question I've had to deal with. I know that I was raised by narcissists and I'm like having to recognize my own narcissistic tendencies.
Yeah, and I'm not going to sit here in front. Blake, personally, as a human being, yes, I have narcissistic tendencies. I was raised by a professional narcissist as well. And I know I have my days. And thankfully, there are people out there that call me out on my shit.
Like me. You're welcome. No, he's not the nice one. Sorry. But yes.
So when you know you're fighting with a narcissist, don't look for approval.
Fuck you, Blake. Fuck you. You know what? I just saw what you did there. Fuck yourself. Just saying.
Yeah, how's that for an introduction?
Poor you. Truly. Poor Blake. His existence is so rough.
Oh my God. Thank you for noticing.
Seething rage. Nailed it. Anyway, can we not talk about you anymore? Can we go back to the topic at hand? Do we feel like we've addressed your inner pain enough? All right.
Oh, so we're at that uncomfortable question time.
We are. We are. All right. Do you have one?
I do.
Okay, go.
And it's actually just a candid one. When did you first realize that you were dealing with your own narcissistic personality traits?
Oof. Honestly, I don't remember the exact moment in time. I don't know. I mean, it.
All right, follow-up question.
All right.
Don't need to know the time frame, but how did you confront them in yourself?
I mean, it was a weird kind of triangular process, which I probably think this is how most narcissists, people with narcissistic tendencies come at it. Coming at it directly probably is not the best of all ways, but I was able to connect some of my behavior to some of my father's.
Okay.
And that was brought up to me in a therapeutic environment. And I was able to see the similarities between what he did and what I did. The circumstances were different. The environments were different, right? But professionally, right? That's what it is. I mean, my father is a prosecutor, right? So he is very well trained in a lot of the interpersonal domination tactics, interpersonal bullying tactics. He and I do it very similarly in being quite verbal, very eloquent, witty with the words, one might say, quick on the get-go, right? And able to emotionally dominate an interpersonal experience kind of in the moment. Usually in a very charming manner, which is even harder for people to fight back on. It was pointed out to me that I did that professionally, and that was quite similar to what my father did. And kind of once you start seeing Paisley in one corner, you start seeing Paisley in the rest of your house. You're like, oh shit. That's what it is. When I feel endangered, when I feel challenged, when I feel cornered, those behavioral patterns come out. And, first practice with my therapist how to deal with those emotions, saying like, I feel really uncomfortable. I feel like I don't know what to do right now. I feel nervous. I feel, being able to put a word on the negative emotion I was feeling as opposed to attack it, that being presented when I realized that how I respond to most negative emotions is offensively. Once I started to notice that the way I respond to being scared, to being nervous, to being uncomfortable is to be aggressive.
Okay.
That the best defense is a good offense, right? Like I blame West Texas and football and all the things that I did, but it's true, right? The best defense is a good offense, is to deflect, is to, to attack. Once I started noticing that and started seeing just how I made a career out of it, and, kind of a really unimpressive line of failed personal relationships out of it. That was actually really the first sign, is start realizing that aggression, when I start feeling aggressive, when I start being aggressive, is usually a sign that I'm feeling something negative, most usually fear. And to practice starting to say that I am scared, which is a very hard thing to say, especially in the moment to the person who is currently scaring me.
Right on.
But yes, that was the first step. Is that helpful at all?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've noticed that in relationships since then, when somebody points out to me that I'm being aggressive, right, that I'm being attacking, they're just like, you seem to be a lot right now. Like you're intense right now. I try to take a step back and be like, all right, well, what am I feeling? Am I feeling angry? Well, probably yes. I'm kind of always feeling angry. But what's behind that? Is it scared? That's usually what I ask myself. Is what I'm feeling scared? Is it fear? Because that's usually what happens.
Okay. I know that was a hard question.
I would say for you, Blake, what would you say is your most prominent narcissistic behavior?
There are days I need to be the center of attention.
What does that look like?
If I'm having a day where my self-esteem is taking a lot of hits, I need to feel validated.
Okay.
And I need to make it known that I've done a lot of amazing things in my life.
You're the nice one.
I am the nice one.
That's what validated means. You kind of need a sort of surfeit of positive attention.
Yeah. I need a positive attention, a positive adulation even. Like I'll go that far. And I realized it's an unhealthy outlet in the sense of where if I'm needing that type of attention, I need to seek it elsewhere other than looking for that type of instant gratification. Like when I was going through things trying to get to where I'm at now professionally and needing to know that I was working towards something better. Like I knew that internally, but I needed to hear it all the time.
Okay.
I needed to absolutely hear it all the time.
I mean, I remember that, right? You know, this past year, right? You've been working towards getting your LPC, and that was a hurdle, and that was a time thing, but you were on it. You were working towards it, but it was real hard.
Yeah. I just recently got my full licensure for the state of Texas. Prior to that, I was an LPC associate, which is a counselor getting their state mandated hours for training.
Right. Which he already had when in New York City. So he came back to he moved to Texas and suddenly no longer was a licensed professional counselor. He had to do it all over again.
Yes, Texas was really nice about that for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And it was a huge hit to my self-esteem professionally and personally because all of a sudden I felt like, oh, I did all this hard work for nothing.
And your expertise kind of got robbed from you.
Yes. And then some topics, like all of a sudden now, I have all my letters again.
You got your letters back, right?
I got my letters back.
Written in Texan.
And I needed that because it was part of my identity that I lost. And then all of a sudden, I'm having all these needs that I didn't realize I had. And it spilled over into really unhealthy needs for adulation.
I kind of want to push you a little bit on that, so that impacted your last relationship, right?
Yep.
The seeking of, if not quite side pieces, sort of side emotional relationships.
Yes.
You're kind of like my friend that I talked about buying the children's book for the colleague. You were kind of looking to make people fall in love with you, women to fall in love with you, right?
No, not like that.
Okay. You were cultivating emotional intimacy with outside of your romantic relationship with, forgive me, mostly strictly females, right?
Some male.
Okay. So, but it wasn't perhaps sexual in nature, but it was emotional.
It was emotional. It was not even remotely sexual.
But it was emotional intimacy, which is...
Yeah. I was craving constant validation because I felt starved.
And we're kind of looking for it in the places like one can get it. Like we've talked about theater, right? Improv, right? There are ways in which Blake can twinkle and shine that are free and consensual.
Which I'm also working on now. So... And also this podcast.
This podcast, yes. It does definitely play to the narcissist in both of us. You're welcome. We love you. I feel like you've already noticed that, so I don't feel like that's
You're
headline
listening.
news.
You're still listening. Thank you.
Not headline news for anybody.
But no, it's like I was seeking constant validation because I felt like I lost part of my identity. And like I developed some really unhealthy tendencies that, thank you therapy, that were identified and that I worked very hard to expunge.
Well, I mean, I also think, forgive me for saying this, you still have them, right? This was a long march to get to your LPC. And I feel like every time I saw you and we recorded, I was like, just keep going. You're doing great. Just keep going. Just keep swimming, right? Like just needing the cheerleading because it's hard to see the forest for the trees when you're in it.
Yeah.
It's okay to ask for that. It's also okay to like have cheerleading squads and friends that do that for you.
But again, there's also the point to where you're asking too much.
What does that mean? What is too much with those kinds of...
Where it's a hunger.
It is a hunger.
It's a hunger that never, until you recognize what it is and deal with it at its core.
It's a black hole of need. That's what I feel like true narcissism is. It's like it's a black hole of need. There's never enough attention. There's never enough pussy. There's never enough cocaine, right? Like there's never enough adulation, not enough plus.
Insert said substance, behavior, action here.
Because the moment you have it, the insecurities eat your life saying you didn't deserve that. They were just lying. They were just being nice to you. So you need more of it, right? It is this constant kind of argument.
Yes. Those 3 a.m. conversations when you wake up and you're staring at the ceiling going, fuck. And where are you at? You're texting. You're on Tinder. You're on this. You're on that. Just looking for validation.
I think how that applies to mine is that the fear, right? I was hiding from the fear. So I was hooked on other people's opinion of me of being fearless, right? So I was kind of constantly searching that out. Somebody telling me that I'm so strong, so smart, so fierce, so fearless, right? You just get addicted to that. Just more of it, more of it, more of it, even though it's the exact opposite of what reality is happening.
And the worst part about it is there's a self-esteem issue involved in that to where you don't believe it.
You can't believe good things.
Yeah.
Well, therein lies the endless hunger.
Don't deserve good things.
You're stealing it. You're cheating it, right?
Yeah.
An imposter syndrome of it.
Yeah.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Blake.
Thank you, Bobby.
This was an interesting topic. I was not down with it when you mentioned it because I was like, oh dear, oh God, okay. Why are we always choosing topics where I come out the asshole?
You are not the asshole on this body, not at all.
Well, but I these are things that I'm aware that I've got these in my personality and they don't come out. There's no like excising them out. It's all about dealing with them as they go on. But it is a question that's come up a lot in our feedback and in our emails and in our our audience. So here it is.
I'm just going to give some pointers for everybody before we go.
Okay.
If you feel like you're dating a narcissist, set healthy boundaries. And if they don't look at the healthy boundaries,
leave.
Red flag. Also, communicate with them about these boundaries. Be explicit.
And specific.
Yeah.
Right? Like our thing, like, let's stop arguing about whether what happened was right or wrong. Let's not even argue about whether it happened or not. Let's start arguing about how I'm feeling about it. Engage with my feelings when let's not engage with subjective versions of the truth.
And also, and if you find yourself dating a narcissist and you realize all these red flags have popped up, make a list of why you're leaving.
And leave it in writing in case they forget and need to reference.
And also seek help. And I'm not talking about professional help. I'm talking about seek help from your friends, your family, your support network. Like when you know, and let them know it's like, hi, I'm dating this person and all these things have popped up. I'm going to need a lot of support when I leave.
Well, what were our go-tos, right? With the litmus test. If you are with somebody and you feel like they're not listening to you, they're just waiting for their time to talk. If you are with somebody and you feel like they're not, when you're exchanging life stories and you feel like it's a competition, right? They keep upping you. And so instead of talking about your experience, you keep like, oh God, that's horrible, right? Yeah. You have to kind of keep, it's a pain game, right? It's a pain Olympics and they keep winning.
Yeah.
Because it's apparently a competition.
Yeah. If it's turning into a competition, leave.
Yeah, pain Olympics suck.
Pain Olympics suck. And also, when you leave, give yourself time to grieve, cut off all contact with them. Because with a narcissist, they're going to try to come back into your life.
Yes, because they can't believe that you would leave them. It just cannot fit into their world.
Nope.
It's like Trump didn't believe he could lose, right? It cannot fit into his worldview. Yes.
Yes, this isn't.
Narcissists will leave you, but you cannot leave them, is the way they think about it, right? Yes.
And also.
And that's the toxic ex that you just need to nope, hardcore radio silence.
And also, don't expect the narcissist to share your grief.
Yeah, ooh. Well, that's a deep statement. Break that down for me a little bit.
One, because you just said it yourself. The narcissist isn't going to be, I can't believe you fucking left me. What are you talking about? I'm this, and this. There's nothing for them to feel bad about in their mind.
Because they did nothing wrong.
They did nothing wrong. You're leaving now. So you're grieving a relationship. Don't expect it to be a two-way street.
Well, also think that through if you can about where the narcissist is coming from. So they are perfect. They do everything for you. You are not sufficiently grateful enough for it.
Right.
And you're leaving them, which means that there's something wrong with you. And you leaving them, you're just not grown up enough or mature enough to admit what you've done wrong. So they're going to kind of keep pursuing you until you admit that you're wrong.
Right.
Because they can't deal with the reality in which they did something wrong.
A narcissist might try to get back with you just to hurt you.
Yes, just to leave you, right?
Yeah.
Just to be the one that leaves.
Just to be the one to go, see, this is what I just did to you. This is how you made me feel.
Right. Which is why when we did that episode about how to get your ex back, we were like, you really shouldn't. Just don't.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Let's all go back, ladies and gentlemen. Do not try to get your ex back. Please, 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 please.
Right. Just don't do it. And if you do it, this is how you do it. And if you do it this way, you're a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
You are the narcissist, right? This is the dickhead move.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, that was a hell of an episode. Damn it, Blake. Anyway, just to recap, come and see us. We'll be much happier, and
And we're also raffling off an amazing bottle of booze.
We are. It's a really
for
good bottle
a
of
really,
booze.
really, really good foundation.
Yeah, a really good cause. Sims Foundation fucking rocks. I love them so much. Again, March 16th, 2023, BLK Vinyl on E6. Come and see us. 11:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Mixtape party brought to you by Cosmic Clash. much.
Awesome.
All right, guys. I'm Bonnie Neal.
I am Blake Thompson. It's time for a refill.
And